2022 TPB meeting. This time I'd like to call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everyone. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for today. Make a motion to approve. We have a second from Ms. Tuttle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Thank you. Next item is to approve the minutes from July the 12th, 2022. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is the director's report. I'll turn it over to Chad. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair and members of the Transportation Policy Body. We have quite a number of items today on the agenda. Staff would like to provide a context and an overview. On the agenda items in number 4, new business, there is A and B. They are related to Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Transportation Improvement Program. As you all know, MPOs are responsible to develop long-range transportation plan. So item 4A relates to amendment to long-range transportation plan. So anytime there is a change in budget revisions, those amendments these are minor amendments. This was presented to you before, and then staff went through making sure public participation and public engagement in this is ensured. And same thing with item B. The short-range transportation plan is the projects that are committed. Funding is committed for 4-year transportation plan. Those projects staff presented, and also project selection committee also presented those in the past 4 months, I think. So now it is formally a tip that goes to the statewide transportation improvement program, a formal document seeking your approval. That would be staff presentation today. So that's long-range transportation plan and short-range transportation plan. And item C is a subset of long-range transportation plan, the freight corridors. And then items D and E are, how the tasks are programmed for the MPO staff. That would be presented as well today. Items F and G, they are related to system performance measures. As you all know, sustainability is important in transportation planning, measuring how the impacts of air quality and transportation system measures. We have Nina from City of Wichita presenting how we monitor air quality. And then also David from KDOT will be presenting on how we monitor crashes on the transportation system and how the infrastructure conditions are. So you will see those two, and they are part of the long-range transportation plan as well. Last item, economic development, I'll touch base soon. Let me request now Ashley to present bike pit count as well as ongoing tasks at the moment. So Ashley and Dora will help us present those. Thank you, Ashley.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dora Gallo, Transportation Planner for WAMPO. I know you've probably seen me a couple times up here, just asking for volunteers for a bike and ped count. The days are Wednesday, September 21st, Thursday, September 22nd, and Saturday, the 24th. I went through and looked at all the volunteers that we have so far, and if we can get some volunteers for Goddard, Derby, Andover, Valley Center, Mount Hope, Keachai, and Mulvane, that would really help us out. Thank you, Hayesville, for getting all your people. Anything else? Any questions? Please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Ashley will be presenting on ongoing tasks at the WAMPO, particularly the RFPs that were happening.
Thank you. So I'm Ashley Byers, Transportation Planning Manager with WAMPO, and we've been working on a lot of requests for proposals or RFPs. The travel demand model RFP closed, and so we're going through the selection process right now. The Comprehensive Safety Action Plan RFP is out, and that will be ending on September 2nd. So we're hoping to receive several proposals for that. And the Economic Development Report, we're working on the scope of work for that right now, and we're hoping to get that posted within the next month or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And the next item on our agenda is economic development. This item took a new meaning for us, particularly right after pandemic. We all are committed to see how best the economic recovery happens. There were many presentations in the past from various jurisdictions. We all are learning from each other how best we can improve the economy. And I want to thank our chairman and also Laura Lombard. They had conversations, and our chairman invited Laura from Kansas Global. Laura is here to share economic development from global perspective. With that, Mr. Chair, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. Any questions at all on the director's report? Seeing none, next item is public comment. Does anyone in the room or online wish to speak during public comment? Please state your name for the record.
I'm Kent Rowe with the Kansas Green Party, Sierra Club, and SOAR, Society of Alternative Resources. I'm also on the Transportation Committee of the Sustainability Integration Board of the City of Wichita. I'd like to have you all take a look at this. These are signs that are beginning to appear in many cities, low emission zones. This is what we need to strive for, is mobility as a service, not just transportation, but also providing energy to homes that need it in challenged areas. The electrification of this community needs to happen very, very soon because of storms, outages. We were just listening to the radio today of power outages in some areas because of the heat, because of storms that occur in an inordinately amount of magnitude and frequency. I would propose, and on August 25th, that I am going to be presenting a webinar through the Kansas Green Party on what's called resiliency hubs for neighborhoods. A resiliency hub is an area which in an all power outage is still running. This runs on solar, perhaps wind, if we're permitted to do so on a small scale in the city of Wichita, which has been prohibited to do now, and vehicle batteries, as well as backup generators. These can run sustainably. I'll show you how to do it, and it is inexpensive. That is the thing that we engineers try to strive for. Off-the-shelf items that are available locally that we can sustain ourselves with in the long run. So August 25th, Kansas Green Party, pretty extensive webinar that I will conduct. Would be certainly welcome to view that. It's on the Facebook for Kansas Green Party. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else wish to speak today on Jane? Please state your name for the record.
Thank you so much. My name is Jane Burns, and I'm just here as Jane, not representing any group. But I follow transportation personally, and I want to thank WAMPO for taking wonderful steps recently, as reported in the Safety and Health Committee meeting to actually research and plan for safety for children and seniors and low income and trendy and lots of folks who live outside or exist outside of cars, at least sometimes. Thank you so much for that excellent perspective, because those folks are at such great vulnerability for severe crashes and deaths. In the past couple of years, crashes in serious injuries and deaths inside cars has gone down, but it's gone severely up for folks outside of cars. So thank you so much. I realize it's hot today. It's hot in England. It's very hot. Plenty of places right now. In fact, it's been for more than many days in our area, and it's flooding in Kentucky and St. Louis, and it's hot in England. Climate change is here. Climate change is here for us, for our children, and for our grandchildren. And what we do now is going to make a huge amount of difference in the value of our children and our children's lives. I'd like to ask you to reconsider the money that the very large bucks that we spend on new highways. One layperson has recently estimated from public sources like Google that 17 miles of new highways in the recent past, and including new East Kellogg plans, is costing $1,400 an inch, which means that's this is $50,400 for a new highway. And that's only 1/3 of the cost of a highway, considering sort of lighting and sewage and police coverage and future maintenance. We're not only committing our children and grandchildren to more heat, flooding, storms, etc., but to the deferred cost of maintaining the highways that we're spending $225 million on. That's for East Kellogg. For that estimate by a layperson recently was $1.3 billion for not quite 17 miles of new highway. So the projected cost is enormous for our children and grandchildren in terms of air quality, severe storms, and maintenance cost. I really appreciate that some folks in Andover could get home, minutes faster after the 5 minutes or the 5 years of reconstruction disturbance. But please consider that there are plenty of other costs involved in money, in air quality, in equity for other folks. Please especially include that in the travel demand model. Please include especially the effects on your children, my children, your grandchildren, and my grandchildren. Are there any questions? Thank you so much for your patience, folks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on public comments today? Approach the podium, state your name for the record.
I'm Jennifer Connolly, and I like to go to happy hour. I went to a little place down in College Hill, and I was kind of eavesdropping on these young people that were there. I shouldn't have been doing that, but I apologized to them and did tell them that that's what I was doing. And what they were talking about is they couldn't afford to live with the infill. And I appreciate the infill that's going on in Wichita. I think it's awesome. We need to do more of that. That's kind of where Jane's coming from, I believe. We're building some new apartments, but a lot of young people only make $15 an hour. My honey's daughter just became I want to go into what she's doing, but I think after the school, she should be making more than $15 an hour, but by golly, that's all she's making. And a lot of these apartments are way beyond their means. So I know this is sort of off the goal there, but I think it also says something that we need more apartments in this town that young people can afford to live in, because they want to live inside the city. They love the vibrance of the city. And that's a way to attract people to our city. And so if we have a vibrant walk, bike district, and we have affordable apartments for these young people to live in, I think we can attract a lot of people because they love Wichita. I was listening. So that's all I have to say.
Anyone else wish to speak on public comments today? Seeing none, move to receive and file public comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is new business. And we're going to start out with an action item for MTP amendment number 2 with Ashley. No, it's not.
Ashley will be right after me. Hi, I'm Kaylin Travascus. I'm a transportation planning intern with WAMPO. Today, I'm going to go through a brief background on the MTP Amendment 2, and why this amendment is necessary. So first, what is the MTP? Reimagined Move 2040 is the name of WAMPO's Long Range Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. This plan outlines the region's transportation system vision. All federally funded and or regionally significant transportation projects within the 4-year time span of the TIP are required to be consistent with its plan. And you can see more in the packet as well on pages 10 through 23. So why Amendment 2 was necessary? During the federal fiscal years FFY 2023 to 2026 TIP call for projects, member jurisdictions in the WAMPO area requested to submit projects to the MTP for funding that would not normally be eligible for WAMPO suballocated funding. This is because they were either not listed in the MTP or they hadn't been offered enough funding in the MTP funding menu portion of the plan. In response to this, TAC and the TPB agreed to temporarily alter the process for selecting projects for the federal fiscal year 2023 MTP, so more of those projects might be considered. This change required an amendment to the original MTP plan. So for a brief overview of the timeline that we're talking about here, you can see in this graphic that the amendment development was initiated by the temporary approval of the new selection process. Then WAMPO completed its call for projects. Those projects were approved by the TPB, and the amendment was developed to support this because TIP projects were selected that the MTP did not sufficiently support. Then the amendment was reviewed at a state and federal level. We had a public comment period and a very successful open house that you'll actually see pictures of later. And now we're on the last stage of the process, which is approval through the TAC and TPB bodies. And TAC has since recommended this amendment for approval. So thank you very much. Ashley is going to take over and talk about the character of Amendment 2.
Thank you, Kaylin. Right. Didn't realize she'd already advanced it. This amendment includes adjusting the funding menu amounts for projects that already had, or they were all in the MTP, sorry. They also included updating some of the time bands. The MTP maintains fiscal constraint, which is good because we cannot program more projects than we have anticipated funding. So this slide shows you the fiscal constraint. So the yellow shows the beginning balance, and then the green shows what our balance is after we made these changes. So there's 13.7 million remaining. This slide shows you all the projects that were adjusted. There are 22 projects on here. And so all the yellow places show what was changed. So the total cost, the MTP WAMPO funding menu, and then the time band. And then this one shows you what it looks like in the revised version, the green. The public comment period was June 15th to July 15th, and we received one public comment at our open house, and it was about wanting to expand public transit and light rail. Here are a couple of pictures from our open house. It was held at the Wichita Advanced Learning Library. We had 10 people show up, so we were pretty happy about that. And it was mostly explaining what WAMPO is and what the MTP and the TIP are. So we did a joint open house. So the options for this amendment are to approve it as proposed, not approve it, or approve it with specific changes. And TAC recommended approval as proposed. So I'm available for any questions.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Ashley, and also Kaylin. Are there any questions at all on this action? Seeing none, I'll move that we approve Amendment 2 for Reimagine Move 2040 as proposed. And I want to thank the TAC and the Project Selection Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Next item is action on the tip, and we've got Ashley again and Nick.
Thank you. So the federal fiscal year 23 to 26 TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, implements the long-range vision of the MTP that we just amended. And this TIP has programs about $12 to $14 million a year of WAMPO's suballocated funding. And again, it has to be fiscally constrained, and it includes all regionally significant and federally funded projects. There are 108 individual projects worth $1.4 billion in the program. The TIP also talks about how we expect to achieve our performance measures through our projects, and also includes an evaluation of projects and environmental justice populations. Oops, there we go. This graphic shows how the MTP and the TIP work together. So again, the MTP is the long-range vision for how transportation should be out 20 years. So this is to 2040. And then the TIP is the short-range implementation. And once projects are in the TIP, then they work with KDOT in order to actually construct and implement the projects. The TIP development process was very similar to the MTP amendment process. It started with a call for projects in the spring. We had some project selection committee meetings and after the call for projects, and after projects were selected, they were recommended to TAC, and then TPP approved those projects in May. We then incorporated those projects into the actual TIP document and had that out for public comment and then approval. So now I will turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Ashley. Now, as members of this body may recall, back in May, you approved certain projects for WAMPO suballocated funding, typically meaning Surface Transportation Block Grant, Congestion Management and Air Quality, and Transportation Alternatives funding. And this new tip that we are asking you to vote on today here would program the funds that were approved for those projects via that earlier vote. WAMPO received submissions for 33 different projects with requests totaling over $117 million, much more than what was available to be distributed, approximately $26 million in federal fiscal years 25 and 26, the 2 years that are being added to this tip versus the previous tip of 21 to 24. And just go over this quickly since you've already seen all of this a few months ago. These 4 projects were already receiving WAMPO suballocated funds, the first 2 were already receiving WAMPO suballocated funds. The other 2 are new ones to receive that are consisting of grant assistance to member jurisdictions, and all of these are guaranteed 80% funding, first priority across the board. And then I can't quite see all of them on here, but these 7 projects on here, including the one that's sort of cut off on the end, would receive proportional funding after those first ones are funded up to 80%. And currently we anticipate that they would receive most of that 80%. And if more funding becomes available, they could receive that 80%. And then in case more funds are available after all of those projects are fully funded, then these 2 projects would have a chance to receive funding. Right of first refusal would be given to the Bel Air project, 45th Street North, Oliver to Woodlawn. And after that, the Redbud Path Trail in Wichita. Now, all the projects in the new WAMPO TIP 20 federal fiscal years 2023 to 2026 were scored on the performance measures that you see here. And if you turn sideways to your left, you can see the names of the performance measure categories and the numbers of projects that help achieve targets for each of these performance measures from the tip. As you can see, there are projects that help achieve each of these performance measure categories in the proposed tip. And now you can see a breakdown of of how much money is spent on different kinds of projects in the tip. The highway projects are the largest part, that being mostly KDOT money for those projects, with the hard with, and unsurprisingly, that's the largest, and then roads at about 22.9%, and then smaller amounts to safety, technology, transit, bike ped, and planning, and bridges. And here's the fiscal constraint analysis for it. As you can see, the anticipated revenues that this analysis is based on, that's revenues across all sources, not just our WAMPO sub-allocated funds, but also state and local funding and debt financing, and also federal funding. We anticipate that I would leave $81 million approximately at the end of the 4 years of the tip, after accounting for the program tip projects listed in the plan, as well as debt service and assumptions regarding maintenance and operations costs. Oh, hang on. And here, as you can see on page 29 of your packet, is a map of the locations of the various projects, at least the ones that are able to be mapped. Some are not able to be mapped because they cover an entire broad area of potential work to be done, such as the aforementioned grant programs. And here is an overlay of those project locations on our environmental justice census tracts, which we analyzed to make sure that those census tracts, on the basis of having a particularly high percentage of the population in poverty or minority population, to make sure that they were not disproportionately affected. Hang on, we'd have a comment in the chat here. Okay, just Mike Moriarty saying he's leaving early. Okay, and anyway, back to the subject. Making sure that these environmental justice census tracts do not have disproportionate impacts from the project's end. Our analysis found that they do not have a disproportionate impact from the projects, or disproportionate denial of benefits. We received 2 public comments related to this tip. One is the same public comment that was already mentioned in the MTP presentation from the open house. So I won't go into that more. And the other was from Les Mangus of the city of Andover, requesting that the project 159th Street East from US 54-400 to Central Avenue be modified to reflect a revised cost estimate, and to modify the scope to show some water line work that will be part of the project. And so the version of the tip that you'll be voting on today would be the version that includes that requested change to that particular project. And so your action options today are to approve the 2023 to 2026 tip as proposed, or to not approve it, or to approve it with specific changes.
Well, thank you, Nick and Ashley. I appreciate it. Also, Mayor Bird Usiri did let us know that he agrees with this. Unfortunately, he couldn't make the meeting today. I want to thank all the members of the TAC that served on this committee. With that, are there any questions, first of all, for Nick or Ashley? Seeing none, I move that we approve the tip as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you all. Next item is on the freight corridor, and we're going to start with Ashley. No, we're not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start off. My name is Alicia Hunter. I'm a senior transportation planner with WAMPO, and I'll provide you guys with a brief background on the CFC and recommendations. So KDOT has asked MPO staff to recommend roads to be designated as critical urban freight corridors, and roads that are designated as CUFCs will become part of the National Highway Freight Network. Projects on roads that are designated as CUFCs that contribute to efficient freight movement will be eligible for funding under the National Highway Freight Program. KDOT and Kansas MPOs in consultation may designate up to 150 miles of roads for CUFCs within the state. And so that's an additional 75 miles more than previously allowed. And CUFCs must be on public roads within the MPO's urbanized area boundary. And WAMPO staff presented draft CUFC recommendations to the TAC in June and to TPB in July. And the WAMPO staff sent draft recommendations to each city and county in the region to provide feedback for us. And I'll actually go ahead and pass this off to Nick, and he'll give you more of a background information on our rationale for choosing our recommendations.
Thank you, Alicia. The United States Code provides specific criteria on the basis of which a roadway corridor can be designated as a CUFC, which are summarized here. But the first is that it connect an intermodal freight facility such as an airport, seaport, or rail terminal to the primary highway freight system or the rest of the interstate system or another intermodal freight facility, or it is in the corridor of the primary highway freight system and serves as an important alternative, or it serves a major freight generator or logistics center, manufacturing, warehouse, industrial land, or it is otherwise deemed important to the movement of freight within the region. And to inform our decisions on which corridors would be designated or rather recommended to be designated as CUFCs, because we are asking you, the TPB, to approve recommendations to forward to KDOT, who would then weigh in on it. And anyway, in addition to taking recommendations from members of this body and from the Technical Advisory Committee on what roadways would be good candidates to include, and taking those into consideration in developing these, we also considered first the locations of actual intermodal facilities and industrial land and warehouses, etc., but also recorded freight volumes as the truck annual average daily traffic on roadways. And so you see a map of the AADT on various roadways in the WAMPO region overlaid on the current CUFCs in the region. And you also see there in the tan peach outline the urbanized area boundary, which all CUFCs are required to be within. So the rest of the WAMPO region, CUFCs could not be there unless the urbanized area boundary were expanded to include those areas. And then on this map, you can see a combined measure of annual average daily traffic of trucks greater than 1,000 and the truck share of that AADT. And so just identifying roadways that are have a particularly high percentage of trucks. And here is just a list of those current CUFCs in the region. I won't go through this in detail because you've seen this already several times. I see, yeah. As I said, we use recommendations from the individual jurisdictions and the other matters that I just described. And, oh, yeah.
Thank you, Alicia and Nick. So this is our first priority tier of projects that we would like to recommend to KDOT. And they are not in any priority order. They're just all in tier 1. And there are 7 projects on this list. Then tier 2, again, they're not in any sort of order within the list. There are 9 projects. And this begins on page 37 of your packet, if you want to read through it. Yeah.
Ashley, can I ask you a question? In our packet, you said there were 7, but are there 7?
Oh, we're missing one. There are 8. You're right. Okay, thank you. Sorry. And then there are 9 in tier 2. And tier 3 has 8 projects. And these are not in any sort of order again. So this map shows those different tiers. So if you look at the red lines, those are the existing CUFCs that Nick just talked about. And then the blue ones are tier 1, purple are tier 2, orange are tier 3, and the green is a primary highway freight system. And then that brown kind of outline, that is our urbanized area boundary, which these must be within. So we are ready for an action unless you have any questions for me. So the different action options are to approve as proposed, not approve, or approve with some specific changes, and TAC recommended approving as proposed. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair. Yes, questions?
I have a question on priority list 1, priority tier. Number 6 is K-15 from US 54 Kellogg down to I-135. I'm not sure that's K-15. Maybe Gary could help on that. I believe K-15 joins onto I-135 at that point. So this might be Wassel, Southeast Boulevard. Yeah. Instead of K-15.
Okay, so number 7, we need to update the name of it.
Number 6.
Number 6. Okay.
Yeah.
It's testing you.
Councilman Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I know this is for existing roadways.
Yes.
How often is this list updated, and is there a way to signal Northwest Bypass as a future freight corridor?
Thank you. Yes. So it is existing roads. We originally did this in 2017, 2018, and this is part of KDOT's freight planning process. And so I would assume that it would happen again in a few years as they redo their freight plan.
Right, because number 9 on priority tier 2 is 119 or K96 from 119th to 235, which is the early phase of that Northwest Bypass, if I'm correct. Well, connecting to it.
Yeah, but it's on an existing road.
Right, just
Yeah,
future planning.
right. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do want to say thank you for moving K-254 into the tier 1. I think we didn't have that last month. If it helps, you might want to add into the narrative there of that FedEx facility out in Bel Air also uses extensively K-254 for access to their facility there.
Is the connection to the FedEx facility from 254 is is also in this list of recommendations, just not in the same tier. So that is mentioned in the rationales. And also, I just wanted to, yeah, let's say about and regarding the matter about the future road, although this is limited only to existing roadways, these designations can be informed by anticipated future developments and anticipated future needs. So if there is not much freight use on a roadway currently, but there are projects in the works that we expect will increase freight usage of that roadway in the future, that can be used as a rationale for designating something a CUFC currently, so long as the road exists now in some form.
Okay, further questions? I guess the first question I have is if we approve this, do we need to modify that K-15 as part of the motion?
Yes, please, if you could, so we can make sure to record it correctly.
Okay, and what do we call that?
This number 6.
Yeah, go back to that one, please.
Do we know for sure the name of that road?
Southwest Boulevard, Southeast Boulevard. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, Southeast Boulevard will replace that. And also will inform KDOT about the Northwest Bypass as well as a potential future freight corridor, just so it's on that horizon when they plan for the future as well.
Okay, are there any other questions before we go to a motion then? So the motion is going to be to approve the recommendations, however, with modification to change the item 6 to Southeast Boulevard, and to see if we can recommend the Northwest Expressway as a freight corridor for the future.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the UPWP amendment number 1, and Ashley and Chad.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ashley.
So the UPWP is the Unified Planning Work Program, and this is our budget for the work that WAMPO does each year. It has to include these different items here, and it's developed annually. An FTA, FHWA, and KDOT all approve it. And we need to make sure that we address regional transportation issues with our tasks throughout the year. So here are the different components. Again, the planning work tasks, what products we're going to produce, who will do what, the timeframes, the costs, and then the funding sources. So we need to do amendments to this as things change over the year. And so this is just our first amendment because we need to make some changes to reflect what we're actually doing. The amendments include updating the number of full-time staff from 8 to 12, moving $54,000 from salary and benefits to operating expenses, adding in the flexible spending account to operating. However, this does not change the total funding in the UPWP at all. So it's all just shifting money around. The public comment period was July 19th to August 2nd. We did not receive any public comments, and TAC reviewed this at their meeting, and then we're here today. The action options are to approve it as proposed, not approve it, or approve it with specific changes, and TAC recommended approving as proposed.
Thank you. You all have been working TAC pretty hard in the last month.
Yeah.
Any questions of Ashley or Chad on UPWP amendment number 1?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I've mentioned in other meetings, I know Pete Meisner has been involved in this discussion and several others about the opportunity to expand Wichita Metro bus system, transit system to more of a regional system. I don't know if it's appropriate to start working that here, but I'd like to see and I don't even know where to begin with it, but I'd like to see somebody taking the lead on expanding that system, because there's a real opportunity in the bill to do that. And I know several people have said, yeah, they support that idea, but I don't know where to start. And I don't know if this is where to start or someplace else, but I see it in here under task 3, multimodal planning. There's $40,000 for that, but it probably isn't enough to do much.
Yes, Mayor, we started conversations with Wichita Transit, and also we would explore more. We programmed the budget to have more discussions. We initiated a conversation. It's a collaboration again, and Ashley, myself, and then Wichita staff, City of Wichita will touch base with you on that project. Thank you for that.
Okay, any comments on that from either of the city council folks in our room? Okay, well, you're aware of it now, and you can, it's going to revolve around what the city council is able to do, because they run the metro. Very good. Any other questions on UPWP or UPWP amendment number 1? Seeing none, move to approve the 2022 UPWP amendment 1 as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Both same sign. Motion passes. Next item is discussion of the 2023 UPWP table, or task rather, and Ashley and Chad.
Thank you. So it is the time of the year to start thinking about what we're going to do next year. And so what I just talked about as far as the UPWP, we need one for 2023. And we are required to make sure we're working on our 5 core documents. And so we need to reflect in the UPWP what we're doing to keep working on those. So the MTP, which we just amended, was originally approved in June of 2025. And we're beginning to update the appendices now, and the various studies that we're working on and putting out the RFPs for will all be incorporated into this MTP when we update it. The TIP was just approved, and so we'll be doing quarterly amendments over the next year. UPWP is happening right now, and that needs to be approved by November. The public participation plan was last approved in 2017, and so staff is working on updating that now, and we hope to have that done before the end of 2022. And then the congestion management process is part of the travel demand model process. That's also part of the MTP work. We're hoping to have that done by April of 2024. So we've just developed a whole list of different tasks that we are thinking about doing next year. And so just wanted to ask you all, if there are any other tasks we should consider? One thing to point out is the bullet that says transit study fiscally constrained implementation plan is what you were talking about, Mayor. We have had some discussions with Wichita Transit about how we could build off the 2018 Connecting Communities study and put together a fiscally constrained implementation plan for how to do that and have those discussions. The first couple on the list here are things we're working on this year. And then we are working with the City of Wichita on their bike master plan. That'll be happening fairly soon, hopefully. And then after that concludes or starts to wrap up, then we will start doing the regional active transportation plan next year or the year after. We'll work on a bike map as part of the active transportation plan. And then there's intelligent transportation systems architecture that needs to be updated, and safe routes to school planning and MTP 2050 work. The bike ped counts that Dora's talked about, we will do those again next year, and then work on updating our coordinated public transit human services transportation plan, which was last done in 2018. And then the Wichita Transit Network System redesign plan is a Wichita Transit plan, but we will be participating in that. And then as part of preparing for potential funding opportunities through bill, we are looking at doing some sort of electric vehicle network plan and working with the City of Wichita on that, since there's some work happening, as well as just administrating the TIP. Yeah.
A quick comment. Thank you, Ashley, for the update. Also, I want to share with you that as the tasks increase towards 2025, as the Metropolitan Transportation Plan develops towards the year 2025, there is more work that's developed, and also we anticipate to hire some additional staff in the future with your with consent of executive committee and in the next few months. One of the things I would like to share with you also is in the travel demand modeling in congestion management program and economic development, there is a need to develop these forecasts for demographic and socioeconomic data. And also intense data coding on transportation system, both in terms of infrastructure and demand. So I just want to, staff would like to keep you in the loop that, you know, the studies are developing and the tasks are increasing, and then staff is diligently contributing towards developing the data. And then we are, you know, committed to be sure that the data is systematically compiled, coordinated with jurisdictions, and you know, developed and provide reports on for you how the trends on the data are happening. So this is just a future of how we are proceeding that staff, Ashley and myself and the staff would like to share with you. So.
Okay, any questions? I know we may not have any recommendations today on tasks that we should consider, but we probably ought to keep this open and next month revisit it in case anyone comes up with any tasks that we need to add. So we'll give you a little bit of homework as to think about it, and we'll put it on the agenda for a brief discussion to see if there's any other tasks that we should consider for the UPWP for next year. Any questions? Well, there's no action on this yet. Hopefully we can come up with some other ideas or tell them that they're going the right direction.
Thank you.
Next item is an update on air quality. And we got Nina Rasmussen from the city of Wichita.
Good afternoon. I'm Nina Rasmussen with the City of Wichita. I also sit on TAC as the air quality representative. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of an update as far as our air quality to date. And I'm going to run through a little bit of background so that my update makes sense within the context. So just to give some context here is the City of Wichita has an air quality program that we've had. Thank you. Since we've had air quality programming since about the 1970s, but we have had a grant provided through KDHE originating from EPA. It's a pass-through grant opportunity. We've had that since about 2012. What this grant does is it allows us to provide education, outreach, and emissions mitigation strategies throughout Wichita, but not only that, it's also throughout Sedgwick County, Sumner, Butler, and Harvey counties as well. So we provide resources for the greater Wichita area. And we look at 3 different area monitors. These monitors are managed by KDHE, and they track specifically ozone, PM 2.5 and PM 10. Those are particulate matter, and they're just different sizes. So that's smoke, dust, things like that. The City of Wichita specifically monitors and is beholden to ozone levels. So that's generally what we pay attention to. Right now, we are considered a region in attainment and have been for quite some time. This means that we adhere to the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And right now that means maintaining a level, a concentration level below 70 parts per billion of ozone. As you can see here, these are the different air monitoring sites within the state of Kansas. These 3 towards the South Central region are the ones that we look at and are what are considered part of our attainment status and how we record what our region status is. So that would be our Sedgwick monitor to the north, the health department, and then PEC to the south. So just to give a little bit of background of what ozone is, when I talk about ozone, I'm not talking about our ozone levels up in the stratosphere. I'm talking about ground level ozone in the air that we breathe. And this is formulated based on emissions from combustion processes. So vehicle traffic and also volatile organic compounds. So these are things like paints and solvents, and oftentimes plants and vegetation naturally give off those as well. And so when we see a combination of the nitrogen oxides, the VOCs, oxygen, and high heat, high sunlight, that's when we get ground level ozone forming in the air that we breathe, impacting our health a lot of the time. And so we want to be mindful of this because this can result in coughing, throat irritation, inflammation in the airways and shortness of breath, decrease in lung function, and it can result in an increase in asthma attacks and hospital admissions. And this is especially true for more vulnerable groups, including children, the elderly, and those with existing respiratory conditions. They are more at risk of seeing those effects more frequently. And so how we record our levels of ozone is sort of a step-by-step process. So we're looking at the hourly data from those 3 monitoring sites, and we are recording the highest concentrated amount per hour. From there, we're looking at an average over 8 hours throughout the day, and then recording that highest. From there, we are recording then the fourth highest daily concentration. So those 8-hour averages end up being our dailies. So we are able to look at not the highest that we're recording, but the 4th highest. And that's what we are recording for the year. So that does give us a little bit of leeway because one particular high day or high hour is not necessarily going to make us lose attainment or bring us down all that much. It really is averaged over a couple different areas in order to give us that value. And even then from there, we're looking at a 3-year rolling average. So that yearly number is then looked at during a span of 3 years and averaged again. And that is what is called our design value. That is what the EPA looks at in order to determine our attainment status. So you can see that there's a few different ways that we are given sort of this buffer room to have these high levels of ozone every now and again without necessarily, sending us into panic mode. But that's still something that we want to be mindful of year to year. So for instance, this year we've seen a little bit of a higher number. The previous 2 years have been lower, so it's really averaged out well. But of course, going forward, we want to make sure that that stays lower or drops down in the future. To give you an idea of our trends that we're seeing, we've generally been pretty low with our number of exceedance days. Those are days where we hit over 70 parts per billion or 0.07 parts per million. We've had a little bit of an uptick this year with 4 exceedance days. So as you can see with the chart on the left, we're seeing a bit of an incline, and what we want is to level that off, but also to eventually bring that back down. We want to maintain that downward trend, especially as we're seeing, hearing conversations from the EPA about revisiting the NAAQS standards and revising that threshold. So as I said, it doesn't just look at 1 year, we look at 3 years to determine our attainment. This is our trend for our 3-year rolling average. And so right now we are sitting at 64 parts per billion. Again, as I mentioned, 70 is the NAAQS threshold. So right now we're doing okay. And these numbers are not finalized as our ozone season continues through October, and that is when monitoring stops for the year. So KDHE will continue to look at that through October 31st. And the reason why I bring this up here and why it's important to WAMPO is because looking at the source categories, we can see that these emissions are formed from on-road sources. This is from 2017 from the National Emissions Inventory. This is the most recent data that they have compiled, showing that on-road sources are 43% of our emissions. And this is local data from Sedgwick County. And so this has been a bit of an increase from 2014 data. We've seen this ratio shift a bit where on-road has increased and our biogenics and agricultural burning has decreased, with non-point sources and non-road sources remaining about the same. And so looking ahead, we work with other agencies and businesses to develop ozone action plans, and we're looking to increase the amount that we are doing that. So we are revisiting some of our agreements and looking at how we can establish some more hard-hitting agreements with local manufacturers and other larger businesses. Right now, it's a completely voluntary commitment to lower ozone emissions, and we do that with local businesses, nonprofits, and surrounding jurisdictions. And again, with this conversation happening right now with a revision of NACs and potentially lowering that threshold, we don't exactly know what that level is going to come down to. So right now we're at 70, it could be 65 that they decide to lower it to next year. Then that 64 that we're sitting at now is a little more precarious. And so it's definitely something we want to consider, especially with different road projects and how that might contribute or help mitigate emissions locally. And so with that in mind, this will require more of a collaborative effort in order to maintain that attainment level in the future. Any questions?
Yes, Troy.
Thank you for that, Nina. Would you mind going back a couple slides to the pie chart?
Mhm.
So is that a percentage of the whole that we're looking at? So it's 43%. So if agriculture burning actually is going down because fewer are using burning and using other methods, then obviously the overroad would go up, right? So as a measurement of like causing us to take action, I don't really think this is a valid graph for that, unless we're just trying to see where we're at in the moment of what's hitting.
Right. Generally, we're just trying to see where we're at the moment, but I will also note that non-point sources and non-road sources stayed relatively the same ratio, while agricultural burning and biogenics decreased. So if all things were equal, they would have also increased, but where we saw the biggest increase was on road.
That's good. Makes sense. The other question would be then, is it, I mean, this is a crazy political question, I guess, but if you were to start lowering that threshold down to like 65 from 70, like it is now, isn't that a way to force people to quit buying cars or gas cars?
I mean, I'm not versed in the political
You don't have
aspect
to
of it so
answer
much.
that. I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize for asking, but that is a weird roundabout way that could be achieved, in my opinion.
Right. And, you know, obviously the lowering of standards is to sort of force emissions reductions in local communities. A lot of things are out of our control, which is the frustrating part, but it is something that we have to be mindful of because we are going to be the ones seeing the repercussions.
Thank you.
So just a follow-up question. You said agriculture as a percentage have reduced, but has it changed in total numbers or just as a percentage?
Just as a percentage.
So the total number is basically the same from agriculture.
Right. And so we've seen a general increase in overall emissions totals. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but tonnage has increased overall.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Mike.
Thank you, Nina. Thanks for the presentation. I remember when we tackled this issue, you saw that first chart back in 2012. It was quite alarming at the time. But do you have access or can you provide a link? Can we on our own look at other regional communities, Omaha, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, is that all available publicly or?
It is in a raw format, so you can do a data query and pull all of that data. I will also mention that the National Emissions Inventory does supply information on various other greenhouse gases. That pie chart specifically is looking at nitrogen oxides and VOCs because those are the precursors to ozone. I'm happy to send out that link for that data, but if you are looking for a bit more of a comparison, I'm happy to run that and send it out.
I'm not sure I didn't know if you just had it easily handy.
No,
And
not at the
then
moment.
Remind me again, what's the penalties if we fall below the attainment world?
So that would require a state implementation plan. So the state of Kansas would put together sort of a plan to get us back into attainment levels. And so that could differ based on how far out of attainment we are. So they base it off of, by how much we are exceeding. So that could look like regulations on manufacturers, higher gas prices due to taxes, vehicle inspection programs. It really is just dependent on what they feel is needed.
Other questions? I don't see anything else. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. Okay, other questions? No other question? No, Tom?
Great, I do. We show no point sources and we show 20-some% of non-point sources. Can you define those? I think we know what the points are, at least some of them.
So our point sources are specific, like power plants, places where we can actually say this is where our emissions are coming from. Non-point sources are going to be things like restaurants and smaller businesses where we don't have one specific place where we can say for sure where those emissions are coming from.
Hey, Commissioner Howell.
Yeah, Chairman, I just wanted to say, if you look at the data over time, it appears that there's a bigger correlation due to humidity and temperature. Every single summer, these numbers climb up and then they drop down in the wintertime. And it's really not as much behavior driven as it is climate driven. I mean, in terms of if you're going to be up over 100 degrees, we're going to see numbers approaching these limits. Every single summer that happens. I don't know what about 2012, but go back to 2012, I'm going to guess that may be related to data. We had a hot season in 2011. So I'm not so sure that it's necessarily emissions as much as it is just the fact that we have cyclic data in our temperature every single summer.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, Nina, thank you very much for being here today. I'll move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Both same sign. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is an update on statewide performance measures from David Schwartz from KDOT. Welcome.
Hello. And let me take a second to share my screen here. Oh, it says a disabled screen sharing.
You should be able to do it now.
Okay, thank you. All right. Can you see my screen now? It's got like 7 boxes on it, like blue boxes.
Yes, we have it now.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, so hi, I'm Dave Schwartz talking to you from Topeka, thanks to the miracle of modern technology. I think we've been trying to get me on the agenda for a little bit, and unfortunately just conflicts and things like that. I spoke with the TAC earlier this year. But the great thing is that I have a shiny new toy to share with you in this presentation, and that is we have a new group in charge of performance measures at KDOT, and they, in consultation with our consultant, have developed a great website, which is what I'm sharing on the screen here. It might be too small for you to read in that room, so I apologize if that is the case. But we'll start with, oh, and I first forgot to start my timer. I do want to respect your time and keep this around 10 minutes. So the reason why we do this is the transportation authorization legislation by Congress set forth these 7 goals. And what I was thinking when Nick was going through the tip was that, you know, these are tied to the goals. And then he actually showed a chart to see how they scored in each one of these things. So thank you, Nick. That kind of ties it all together. But safety, infrastructure condition. The third one should say congestion reduction. I need to talk with our folks and get that changed. System reliability, freight movement and economic vitality, environmental sustainability, and the last one is reduction in delays to project completion. So the ones that we are going to be focusing on, that we have federal performance measures that we report to FHWA, are safety, infrastructure condition, and system reliability. Although you could argue that some of the ones that we talk about are actually tie into congestion reduction as well. So let's get started first with safety. And again, I apologize, it may not be readable to see the different values on this chart, but for safety, there are 5 different things that FHWA asks us to track. And it's also a partnership with NHTSA, the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration. Both of those are, you know, they're sister organizations under DOT. And so fatalities, fatality rate, serious injuries, and serious injury rate. So these are the types of, and sometimes we call them disabling injuries. Here lately, we've actually changed our definition on our crash form to suspected serious injury, because often the reporting officer doesn't know the outcome of an injury, that, you know, but they can judge to the best of their ability whether it's going to be something that is going to, you know, result in a disability for the person. And then the 5th one is non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So those are our users that are more vulnerable. They are walking or just happen to be standing by the side of the road. Also bicyclists and other non-motorized forms of transportation. So the first one, and the one that's probably everybody's familiar with, and it's weighs heavy on our minds, is fatalities. And again, just like with the air quality, where they take an average, a rolling average of 3 years, because fatalities tend to be very you know, volatile, they fluctuate a lot. We do a 5-year average for that. So that's the trend in the 5-year average. That's this light blue dashed line. And unfortunately, you can see that we've been going up even after you average out over 5 years. Actually, the moving average has stayed the same the last 2 years, 425, both of those. But you know, we definitely would rather see it go back the other way. So for each one of these performance measures, we have to set a target. For the safety ones, it's more of a year-to-year target thing. You'll see later when we get into system condition that it's more of a, we set a 2-year and a 4-year target. And I better get moving, or we won't be able to get through all these. But you can see that we chose a target for 2022, and I know that we're already in 2022, but that's 407, which is, you know, quite a bit lower than what we're seeing in the 5-year average. So we we're trying to strive for a reduction in those. Anyway, below each one of the charts, you can see the actual raw data. So these, these numbers don't agree necessarily with the moving average, because that is, a 5-year average. But you can compare the data yourself. That's what I love about this website. And I'll just real quickly go through. Oh, darn it. Well, now the website is not cooperating with me here in my moment. But so anyway, each one of these other ones, fatality rate, serious injuries, there's a similar chart with a target. And again, even if the trend has been going upwards, we chose as our target slightly lower than what the trend would suggest, in that we're trying to put in both behavioral and engineering solutions, and even enlist education and emergency management, the 4 E's as we like to call it, to try to turn those trends around. And since safety is not showing up here, I'm going to move on to system conditions. So the two asset types that FHWA asked us to measure are pavement condition and bridge condition. So you can see here, similarly, we have a trend chart, and in this case, the dotted line is just the arithmetic average, or I mean, I'm sorry, it's a regression analysis. So unfortunately, each one of these charts, we put the desired trend. Obviously, we want our good pavement to go up, and our pavement in poor condition to go down. Unfortunately, the trend right now is not doing that. Our good pavement has been slightly dropping, although you can see in 2020 it did tick back upward, so that's a good sign. Our poor pavement has been fairly steady, but I think that because we started so low in the 2014, that's why it shows a slightly upward trend in the poor condition. But okay, so, and I sorry, I got to back up. FHWA asked us to split the interstate pavement from the non-interstate NHS. So remember, that's the national highway system. And so those are the most traveled routes within Kansas, tend to be of the highest importance for freight and things like that. So we'll switch over to the non-interstate NHS. And again, the good pavement is on a slight downward trend. And the poor pavement, unfortunately, is on an upward trend. That's not good. But you can see that for both of these, we chose targets. Well, actually, for the non-interstate good, we gave ourselves a little bit of room. We chose 55% good, and right now we're sitting at 59%. For the percent poor, we chose 1.5%, and unfortunately in 2020 we actually exceeded that. So that would be one of the performance measures where we missed our mark. We actually did not achieve what we were looking for. I'll just real quickly go back to interstate. You can see again, interstate, the target was 65% good, and we did bounce back above that in 2020. And the target for poor was 0.5% in poor, and we're quite a bit below that at 0.3%. Similarly, for bridges, we rate good, fair, and poor, and so the performance measures are about the amount of bridges in good condition and the amount in poor. And you can see here it's by deck area. So a bridge such as the canal route, where you have a lot of deck area. I mean, it's a multiple lane highway, and it's very long, but that would count a lot more in this score than say just a rural bridge where it's only 2 lanes and maybe not even any shoulders. So the bigger bridges tend to weigh more in this performance measure. And again, unfortunately, the good bridges are on the decline. And we actually were right on our target in 2020. 70% of the deck area is in good condition, and that was what we chose for our target. And for poor, and this is an actual FHWA, you can't exceed more. No. I'm sorry. There is an FHWA not to exceed number, but it's much higher than 3%. Our target was 3%, and we're at 1.5%. So we're doing pretty well in that area. Real quickly, I want to cover the last one, which is system reliability. And I swear to you, these graphs were working when I tried it earlier today. Let me quickly do a refresh of the page. And you can see here the link for this new performance measures page, so you can check it out yourself. We've also, just to help give you a comparison, the strategic measures is our own internal KDOT. So we don't necessarily agree with all the things that FHWA asked us to measure, so we came up with our own, and some things that aren't even of this type, measuring assets or anything like that. So just pointing that out. If you want to look at the federal ones, you need to click on this link here, federal measures. So we'll try system reliability again real quick. Oh, good. Okay, so here we are. So again, divided up interstate and non-interstate. Basically, this is using probe data. Oh, sorry, it says my time's up. Using probe data and throughout the state, and it measures how often you would be late. So you want to try, if you're 95% reliable, that means one time in 20 you would be late, considerably late for your destination. So again, interstate, we set a target of 95%, and because of the pandemic and the reduced travel, we shot way past that. We did 99% reliability on the interstate. For non-interstate, similar story, although not quite as big of an uptick. Our target was 95%, and we were at 97%. And then there's a separate one for trucks, and it's measured differently. This one, the perfect score would be 1. And as you get farther away from 1, that's more travel time that you have to count on in order to make your delivery on time, let's say. So here, lower is better. And we chose a target of 1.16. We were above that in the last, quote, normal year before the pandemic. But then and in 2020, under the pandemic, we were actually, we beat that score. So things got more reliable. Obviously, you are all familiar. There was a lot less traffic on the roads in 2020. And I think that I have exhausted my time, but I would be glad to stand for any questions or anything like that.
Well, thank you, David. Anyone have any questions? Has the staff got the link to this dashboard so that they can put it in our minutes? Okay, Chad says we do. I'll make sure we include the dashboard link in our minutes, and I appreciate the briefing. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is economic development, going along with kind of the theme that we've had most of this year. And we've invited Laura Lombard from Kansas Global and to let us know what's happening in her world. Welcome.
Thank you. Get up my presentation and we'll get started. This didn't work. New share. What is that? There we go. Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Dennis for inviting me along with Chad today. It's a pleasure to be in front of everyone. I see some familiar faces, but for those who don't know me, I took over for Karen Page a little over a year ago now as the head of Kansas Global. So I just finished my first year and excited to report on a program that she started about 3 years ago. So I'll start with that. Okay, so about 5 years ago, the city, Kansas Global, and Brookings did a study on the export environment in the Wichita area. And because of the findings of that program, Kansas Global started a program in conjunction with or in partnership with the city of Wichita that would allow Wichita to expand its exports in a few different ways. The report found that Kansas and Wichita in particular is heavily dependent economically on exports. It will surprise no one that the exports mostly coming out of this area were agriculture and aviation, primarily aviation. But one of the goals that came out of that plan was to diversify the exports that are coming out of this area. Diversify in general, but also diversify. We were very strongly product oriented, again, with ag and aviation, but services is also an exportable, we'll call it a product for now. So we wanted to expand on our services that we were exporting as well. So the Export Accelerator Program was created, and the idea is that we take 5 companies a year, one of which could be aviation, 4 others that need to be some other product or service, that we help them from beginning to end enter a new international market. That could be a service, and I'll go through some of the companies we've worked with, or at least the sectors that we've worked with over the last few years here in a minute. But it could be anything from software as a service, could be beer is one that we'll see, could be furniture that is being produced here, all different manner of different types of products and services. But the goals, as mentioned on the slide here, grow our overall exports in general, diversify the exporting industries that we're exporting, expand percentage of service exports, which I'll show in a few minutes that we have started to do, and increase jobs through these exports. And kind of as an extension of that, we are trying to create an exporter network as well. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're doing that in a few minutes. The program starts by Kansas Global working with the client to really determine where in the world. When you're new to export, you've never gone before, sometimes people go say, oh, I've got a cousin in X country, maybe we could go there, right? Not a very data-centric strategic move necessarily, other than a personal connection. We try to take real hard data, looking at in some cases, we use the same data for all clients. So we're looking at ease of doing business across the world. We're looking at where in the world has the most imports in their particular sector. In some cases, some clients are more comfortable maybe with an English speaking country versus a non-English speaking country. So we do factor some of those preferences in as well. Maybe there's a demographic, maybe their product serves a demographic of men from age 30 to 50. So we look at that as well. So real data driven in terms of our methodology. After we've got a short list, so we look literally at every single country in the world. We have a spreadsheet that we provide our clients. We narrow it down to about 4 to 5 countries that we think are going to be the targets. We're part of a network called IBG Global. It's a group of consultants all across the world. So we have our clients and ourselves meet with that particular client or consultant rather in that country to test our theory. So from about an hour to an hour and a half conversation with, again, 4 to 5 different consultants across the world, we narrow it down to the one country that they're going to export for that year. Not a foolproof. We've had a couple of circumstances where we thought one thing, but when we went even deeper, we found something else. But at least it provides a real, again, data information-based reason for rationale for going into a particular country. Once we've done that, we work with our partner overseas to provide our clients with a market research report. They start looking for either a distributor or another type of partner that will help them enter that particular market. And through the course of the year, we go through a vetting process of who they're actually going to partner with. The goal is that they come out of that year with a partner that's going to allow them to successfully sell their product or service overseas. So that's the process. Right now, in terms of the kind of the timeline that we've been on, so the program wonderfully started in March of 2020. Well, we all know what happened in March of 2020. COVID hit Kansas amongst the rest of the world, and the program got delayed by a few months trying to figure out how do you handle this process that originally was supposed to take clients overseas as part of it when the world was shut down. Thankfully, as we've all learned these last 2.5 years, the internet is a wonderful thing and Zoom is a wonderful thing. So we were able to take some of the meetings and whatnot that would have happened overseas online or through a virtual platform. But our 2020 cohort, the first cohort, we're in our 3rd year now, just finished signing deals and whatnot earlier this year in the 1st quarter. So we should have real hard data a year from now in terms of what their first year of sales actually looks like. Second cohort is still in process. Most of them are at a point now where they're talking with potential partners. So by the fall, we believe that we'll be finishing with most of them, and they should have partners coming out of the program. And then right now, and where I'll ask you at the end of this, is that we're recruiting for our 3rd cohort of companies this year. We've got one in the program now, and I've got two that I believe are going to be signing shortly, but we're looking for two more. So that's a ask I'm going to ask of all of you here in just a little while. What's really great about this program and why I think it's so innovative is that it's really a fairly low cost program in terms of what it costs both us and the clients to do. But over time, there's going to be exponential growth. So as the first group goes through and they're starting to sell, they're not going to sell for just 1 year, right? They're going to continue to sell presumably year after year after year. And then each year you're adding in more companies into the fold. So we'll see a nice curve of the types of sales that were and revenue generated from this program as the years go on. So by year 4, we estimate that it'll be about $1 to $2 million, $1 million to $2 million in revenue sales after the first year for each cohort combined. So if it's 1 million after the first year, if that's correct, presumably they'll sell more as years go on, but also you add in more sales. Again, you'll see that nice growth over time. Sectors represented, we're doing at this point 40%, which isn't as helpful for WAMPO in terms of services, which aren't necessarily going over roads to get to market. But from the perspective of the export plan and one of our goals, we have 40% of our current companies within the program that are on the service side and 60% that are our products. As you can see, it really ranges in terms of the types. I think over time, as we do this more year after year after year, we'll start to see more trends on which products beyond aviation and ag tend to rise to the top in terms of ones that are key for us. But right now, we've got a very nice range of different types of companies. We're also exporting all over the world. I was meeting with Becky Tuttle the other day for lunch, and she asked me, where in the world are you seeing bigger trends? Here's the graph of what we're seeing, at least in the first 3 years so far of the program. We're seeing quite a bit in Europe, no surprise there. I'm actually a little surprised that we haven't done more in both Mexico and Canada. Those are our largest export markets, of course, for the United States, but we're finding that some other locations in the world are also very key. Australia has been a very popular destination for our clients so far. We also happen to have a really strong consultant partner there, and they're excellent. So to some degree, we're steering companies towards places where we really trust our partners in those countries to find it. But even so, even just with the data, Australia has been a surprisingly strong market for our clients. I'm not going to go through all of this for the sake of time, but just some key points to put out. 3 out of the 5 participants from the first year cohort succeeded in finding partners. 2 did not. The one that I will kind of describe, Tyler Walston, who actually used to work for Kansas Global, he got hired by that client. And that was one where I mentioned earlier, sometimes we find that the process maybe didn't select the right country because there's maybe a regulation that we weren't aware of or whatnot. That's what happened with them. That said, Tyler has utilized the work that we did in order to help them grow into other countries too. So not directly our credit, but some of the work that we provided definitely did help, has helped them expand into other locations. This year, at this point, it's looking good for all 5. We'll see what ends up happening, again, this fall, but I would say 4 out of the 5 are in very strong position at this point to succeed. And one company we found in Canada was not the right fit, but we had enough budget left over in our marketing budget to be able to help them in another location as well. So we're looking at that now. I don't know what exactly happened with my presentation. It looked not quite as, but anyway, here we are. These are some of the quotes. Again, for time's sake, I'll go through them. Anyone wants a copy of the presentation, I'm happy to share this. And then lastly, how can you all help? Like I said, we are in recruitment right now. Some of the rules in place for us on this is that, again, only 1 aviation company a year out of the 5. We can also help a company that's in one of the communities surrounding Wichita each year too. So if you have, for those of you who are not Wichita based, if you know companies that you think might be interested this year or in future years, we'd be happy to look at them as well. I'll leave it there. I wanted to go through this fairly fast because of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may all have.
Questions for Laura, Commissioner Meitzner.
Hey, thanks, Laura. Hey, back when Karen was teaching me and others about export business, at one time, I think the Brookings Institute was able to report
Yes.
a percent of every new dollar into Kansas. And then we kind of use that as is it still in that 40, 50 cents per dollar? New dollar is out of this area?
It's in that realm. Yeah, it's in that general vicinity of it. And I can actually find out the exact number if you'd like.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it's helpful when we're selling the region, but I didn't want to be wrong if we're quoting 40 or 50 cents of every new dollar.
Sure.
Into Kansas coming from this area is very powerful. So
It's, I don't have the data in my head, but I will find out. But also, I think that's going to be in that realm based off of what I do know. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, I will leave it there for today. And again, if anyone's interested in the presentation, happy to share it.
Well, Laura, thank you very much. Thanks for what you do to help with exports. Next item on the agenda is updates from our committees. First one is Executive Committee. We were going to have a meeting last week, but the Global Leadership Summit came to Wichita on Thursday and Friday last week. So we actually slipped the Executive Committee to this Thursday. So I want to make sure that those that are on the Executive Committee can meet with us. We will meet in this room, but we'll also have an opportunity to meet online for that. We do have a number of items to discuss. Those on the Executive Committee, I think Chad's already sent it. I saw it, but I think it went to everybody. Well, we may end up with a slight executive session during that, which is kind of odd. We don't normally do that, but we do have some personnel issues that we'll have to talk about. So we're going to have to figure out if anyone's coming in online, how that we can control that executive session. So I'll be talking with Kelly and Chad a little bit about that before that we go into that meeting. So I will give you an update next month on what we're doing there. The next one is the active transportation, and Alan is here in the audience. Do you have anything for us?
Hi there, thank you. I have told you several times that in the past meetings, we have been going through and getting presentations from different communities on what their plans are, and that we intend to somehow combine those and take those into account in the WAMPO regional plan. Well, we're finally getting to the point where we are getting ready to do that and starting to talk about what we're going to actually put into our plan. So encourage you, if you want to be a part of that process, to have someone at our meeting. Our next meeting is September 7th at 9:30. It's virtual. So I'd love to have your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. And the next is KDOT Metro, and Tom, there's a lot of stuff happening up at the North Junction.
Well, the North Junction is the headline, that's for sure. We've had closures almost every day for the last week. We have another week of closures. It's just constant, and that is the pain and suffering from this project, which was the #1 priority in the region. So that's just part of the game, I guess. But we are seeing real progress on that northbound I-135 ramp to southbound I-235. And the progress that the inconveniences are pushing that progress even faster. And I think we'll get to a point someday soon where we'll have fewer closures. But if you drive through there, you'll see some obvious progress there. And in fact, this morning we opened a new ramp, the southbound I-135 ramp to southbound I-235 opened this morning. So that is half of that project, but the big part of the project is that bridge, the flyover 2-lane piece that goes from northbound 135 to southbound 235. So that work will continue, and so we'll go from there. We have other projects in the region, but not as inconvenient as the North Junction, let's say. And then also I wanted to say that next Monday, August 15th in Andover at 1:30 p.m. there will be an announcement by Governor Kelly and Secretary of Transportation Julie Lorenz and others, including Troy and Pete will speak add an announcement for the next phase of the Ike 10-year program for KDOT, and that will move a number of projects, some of them in South Central Kansas, from the design phase to the construction pipeline. So that's going to be exciting. That will be Monday, August 15th in Andover at 1:30.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any questions for Tom? Next up is KDOT, Mike Moriarty. Are you online?
Mike sent an email to Emily to distribute to us. Ashley, do we have that?
Right. It's at your seats. We printed off the email that Mike sent.
Okay.
He said he wasn't going to be able to stay.
I see it now. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, next is Federal Highway. Is Rick Buckland online?
This is Cecily Cochran. I'm with Federal Highway. It's great to
You're
be
here.
here with
Welcome.
you all. Yeah. There are currently no updates. I've been working closely with Chad and the rest of WAMPO staff on available discretionary grants, reconnecting local communities, and also the safe system for all. Of course, they do have deadlines approaching for one for September, one for October, but I believe Chad is on it with getting all the information out necessary. So there will be more unveiling of available discretionary grants under bill. Right now, I think they're waiting for at least these two to come through before they release more. I will be sending those out as promptly as I can. Also, I will be working with WAMPO staff on the 2023 UPWP. We've already met with staff prior to, so the tasks are right on hand with what's required for bill. So if anyone doesn't have any questions, I mean, I'll be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks. Welcome. One other person that I just want to mention is Andrew Weens. Everybody probably knows him. He's very instrumental in a lot of especially the North Junction. But he pretty well took care of the Transportation Coalition for us and made that happen. He is taking another job. So he'll be leaving the Chamber of Commerce. He's going to be missed. If you know anyone that would be great in that position, why the Chamber is hiring, and that has nothing to do with Sedgwick County or anything. But I want to make sure that we don't lose the momentum that Andrew provided to us as we move forward. So I want to thank him very much as he was off to work with Mark Dugan, who is a friend of mine that owes me now after he stole somebody from us. But just I want to let everybody know how much I appreciated Andrew. Anything else need to come before the committee today? I don't see anything else. So with that, we'll adjourn for the day. Thank you all for being here.
Let's see. Stop recording. Sure.